All right, well, I guess we can get started. So it's
Yeah.
7:01 or so. Everybody. Since we have a guest here tonight, I'll just go around again for make sure everybody's introduced. Doug Bogan, the chair.
Jack Gale, treasurer. Steve Hobbs, author.
Pat Lindsay. Dan Melvin.
Rob Gibson.
Paul and Paul Panish.
And you know Paul. Your neighbors. I think everybody here except Steve is a voting member tonight. So since we have others that didn't make it. We'll suspend the usuure agenda and go right to Jim's issue. Jim Ribbett is looking for information on conserving his land, and his land happens to be adjacent to Paul's, but also adjacent to the Goodwill Preserve, the amended, the new part of the conservation area. So I think we'd be interested. Paul, are you able to bring up the map?
Yeah, I'm in the process of doing that. Bear with me just a second.
Why don't you say a little bit about your land?
It's an interesting piece of property. First part of it is mainly fields, pasture that we reclaimed. It was overcome with invasives. So I contact the forester, fellow out of Rochester, Dave DeLay. Went in, did a plan on reclaiming the fields, what was needed, and we got what's called a cost share program with Natural Resource Conservation Services. Yes. That was 07, 08. Bought the property in 05. It was John Kaler's property. Some of you folks may remember John's.
No, the family.
Any rate, there was 50 acres, and that was a lot more than I had planned on dealing with as far as doing anything with it. I mean, I did want that much property that was available. So we bought it, went through the various cost share programs. So we've got maybe 7, 8 acres in pasture. I did run my business out of, he had a very large garage, concrete block, 40 by 80 structure. And Brian Lindsay and I, Brian went in on that part of it with me. He's got a sawmill there. Just Brian's character. Most of them.
Be careful, Jim. His sister is there.
I'm sitting right across from me, Paul. Thank you.
For Brian, I did.
Great guy, though. I mean, he has a can-do attitude that is appreciated. And so I had a landscape business in town for about 40 years, I guess. Retired, sold it, and now I've got a little bit more time to pay attention to the property. Of course, life does get in the way, and my wife developed cancer back in 2017. She's doing well. It has been a 7-year journey. So that's what I was referencing, or that's what I referred to when I said I've got a lot going on at home. But like I said, things are improving. Right now, I'd like to get a better handle on property and where when I say we, the family goes with it. You know, where they go, how they get involved in it. I've got 2 children, they're both in the late 40s, early 50s. And they're very agreeable with us putting in some sort of conservative conservation easement, or, and I'm not even sure what the various programs are called, whatever.
So we can go over several. But how many acres is it? How much are you looking
Well,
to conserve?
I
Yeah,
probably,
let me pull up the card on it, and you can get, so it's 43 acres. I don't know if you had a chance to look. The parcel is the one that's outlined in yellow. This is the Goodwill. This is part of the Goodwill area here. This is not. So this is the abutting area, and then the Goodwill property extends in this area roughly. Okay.
And are you looking to continue living there and keep
yes.
the land around the house?
Mhm. The
So-
land around the house, between the house and the shop, is probably 5 acres. Then there's that Paul referenced, the 43 on that.
Oh, so that's in addition.
Yeah, so it comes out to 50 plus or minus. I think it's closer to 49. But
So Jim, my assumption is that this one in yellow is, since you've subdivided the property,
Correct.
you probably would want to be looking at that one as far as the easement goes, or are you thinking of also putting part of your house lot
It
under
would
that?
be that one, Paul. Putting the house lot in, it gets complicated as far as
Right.
who ends up there after we're no longer here.
So the area in yellow is pretty much undeveloped and it's either fields or woods,
Yes.
which is what is usually good because easements with like the place up on off of Pond Hill Road. Remember telling that person that he needed to get rid of that decrepit house and he has had it knocked over. I don't know where he's at, but
Yeah.
there's certain things that the easements don't like.
Well, and also the mill that that you know that Brian Lenzi runs or owns is also not. That's this little parcel here, right, Jim?
Well, it's part of the land where the landscape business was.
Right. So you have that subdivided off as well, which is good because you don't want that to be part of the conservation easement. So I think this one is really pretty free and clear.
Yeah. Didn't realize that, but yes, looking at it that way.
And just to use the numbers showing 18, 7, and 6 are all part of Goodwill right now.
18, where is it? Yeah, 18, 7, 6. Yes, that's correct.
Two, that little square in the middle there. Is that two?
This is 5. That's part of the Goodwill area as well.
Okay.
So it's a, good amount of abutting land and probably would be helpful in terms of access around that corner or whatever.
Well, if his goal is this land was to be served for public hiking access.
Yeah.
That's
Getting ahead
I'm
of things,
I'm
really.
looking for,
Jim, why don't you? And my recollection is that there's a hemlock stand back here and some trails. Could you tell us a little bit more about what the lay of the land is there?
the lay of the land there is high, and then it drops off quite precipitously as it gets down toward, there's a what I call muck and peat soils that are just and that's a real term, muck and peat.
Well, wetlands in Barrington, yeah, we understand that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The way you looked at me like, who's muck and peat?
No, it was a little more creative. Tell us you had a peat bog and you're heating your house with it.
What's the stream? Is there a stream at the back?
Yes, there
It
is.
says Bumford Brook.
I don't know. Is it?
Bumford.
Is it?
So it says, so I'm sure if we look at the map, it probably runs out towards 125 and
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it goes to Malago Creek, probably. No,
But it crosses 125 because I know it skirts State's Pit.
Okay, well, that's Longford, yeah.
Yeah, right. Here you go.
So you were asking about the hemlock part of it. So it's a great wildlife refuge for deer in the wintertime. They tend to yard there. It's protected from the weather. Has some interesting ledge, bony soils. None of the soils on that piece, on the whole piece, are probably worth much. I mean, it's silty, gravelly, a lot of false water tables.
There'd be not much farming going on.
No, maybe Christmas trees, but that'd be about it.
but you said there was a field created at some point, or it is, some of it's open land, so.
Yeah, the land just beyond the house is what we created field out. And that goes from the property is bordered by two stone walls, one on either side. That would be, east, northeast, and then the opposite end, I guess, west, southwest kind of thing. And they run, the one on the far side, the side closest to the shop, just goes straight down to the end of the property. Probably the better part of 2,700 feet. The one, and I don't know whether you can see it. Yeah, it does, kind of jogs out. The one on the east side, the side where our house would be, that wall goes down, and then you can see the jog to the right on a angle. Yeah, that's right, Paul, the diagonal.
Yeah.
And then it across at the back piece. That back piece is where the most of the well, there were two places. That's where most of the boggy soils are. Just on the other side of the fields, up closer to the house and the shop, is, I'm sure that would be considered wetlands. I don't know what the category would be. And when they were logging it, I think it's been logged over a couple of times. They did put, I'll say, a road or access in, but it was just mainly boulders and gravel and whatever. I'm not sure, but that's the main access into the wooded section.
But that was prior to your ownership, logging?
No, that was, best I can tell, might have been in the 50s and then late 70s.
Yeah. So it's been, otherwise it's been just growing forests.
Yeah, I'm sure it was all agriculture at one point. And then, like I said, the only thing that showed signs of having been farmed or hay or whatever was the area that we reclaimed with removal of the invasive species.
I think one thing you want to do is whatever activities you want to do on this land, make sure they're in your easement. Now, obviously, you can't build a factory, but there are easements that allow for logging done to a forestry plan and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or agriculture.
Or agriculture, which you're kind of telling me probably Christmas trees are useless. But
Generally, I mean, generally the easements allow pretty much any agricultural activity, and that can include activities that support agriculture, such as equipment sheds and things like that. But you do want to be explicit in the easement. But I think there's a few things that we need to make clear about how the easements can be done. And like I mentioned to you before, Jim, it really depends on what you want to do with the property, whether or not you want to retain ownership in the property or pass that on to, another entity. Um, all of those are possibilities. They affect the finances. And is Gary there tonight?
No,
No.
Oh, that's too bad because he's probably got a fair body of knowledge in this area. But I think those would be important topics to discuss is, what you're thinking of in terms of ownership and what the different kinds of ownership would mean to you.
Right. And guesses why, the way I would look at it, what are the pros and cons of each of them? I mean, my overall goal is to keep the land available for, whether it's forestry or agriculture, but more for people to be able to, hike through or be part of and have some contiguous land, which allows for more, variety of habitats.
Yeah. And all like
different wildlife.
So you're looking to perhaps allow public access?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I want to have an outdoor concert there, but yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, passive recreation.
Yeah.
Which is what most of our lands are all about. Yeah.
Does that lot have access to the street? Is that what I see the
Yeah, it
yellow?
looks like that's a right of way coming out to
Yeah.
Ross Road.
Bottom left.
where the hand is.
Right here. Yeah, it looks like you've allowed for access between the house and the big garage and the mill.
I was through it. It's right between the property line, or not the property line, but the subdivision line between the shop and
Yes.
the house property.
One thing you might want to specify, since this is contiguous with other property, you may not want to have people out parked on your street walking up that 50-foot area. Some people get a little upset when they look out and they're showering and there's somebody walking through their side yard. You can just specify, yeah, you can use the land, but we don't want people parking and access there. And obviously would be, well, if the trails were going to be put in, it would be up to us to get them connected.
Yeah, and keep in mind, Jack, keep in mind that, on my property, there's like 4 parking spots. It's not many, but there are some over here.
Yeah. I don't think that people, you and others on Ross Road, don't want people parked on the side of the road. Use your spots and that's it.
Right.
There's the
Right.
back end to the bigger conservation. There's parking there.
Right at the end of the road there.
Like where 16 is.
Paul, can you put the cursor on where the parking area is?
It's right here.
That's what was
Right in
created
here.
years back, right?
Yeah.
Where the Goodwin back entrance.
Right.
Goodwill.
Goodwill.
Yeah, so it's what, just a couple hundred yards down to your property from there? I mean,
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
very short walk down the street.
So, yeah.
So I mean, someone could, if we ever, get the logging finished and put in some trails, I mean, someone could conceivably, do a loop down through here and come back out and go back to their car, something like that.
If that was allowed, yeah.
So anyway, there's a lot of possibilities there. But as far as the conservation, you're basically selling a development rights, and that's kind of the
Yes.
terminology. And what you want to do, I gather, is to make sure it doesn't get developed, for this foreseeable
Because you could
future.
retain the ownership of the land, you could will it to your descendants, but they'd be stuck with an easement that says you're not selling it for house lots or other activities that are inconsistent. Because what you put in the easement, we have to go to like the Attorney General's office to change it after you're gone. And your wishes of your family really don't count. It's what you set up.
Mhm.
And so that your wishes are reflected and not the fact that, someone 2 generations from now wants to put a McDonald's in, which is not likely in that neighborhood. It's,
Who knows?
No, but the things that you could be allowed, for example, if someone who ends up with the property wants to raise horses, if someone, they could also, do forestry, they could do logging operation. Or, if you chose to give that to the town, so that you no longer had ownership, then that stuff is no longer under the control of whoever previously owned the land. It now is under the control of the town, and the town is supposed to try and manage those lands. Or, some conservation agency.
So you get the benefit of getting land off your taxes, stuff like that, but you also have no control about what could happen next. Unless there's an easement with it that says it's gonna stay nice and natural.
Yeah. Well, that's why I'm here, because the only part of the property that's really expensive tax wise is where the house is and where the distance is. And it's it comes with the territory.
Yeah.
The,
Do you have land use on lot 22?
it's
I mean,
current,
current use.
and that's what makes it, doable.
So there are several different ways you can sell the development rights, and the good news is you can get some money for it. So if you're looking to, benefit, and depending on who you choose to work with, it may be a different amount. I guess do we buy easements from the town, or I don't know if that's an option, but most likely.
They do, Doug. I mean, my easement is held by the town.
Okay, yeah, so one example, you talked to Paul and how he did it. And then the other, one of the most common around here, you work a lot with, is Southeast Land Trust, SELT. Are you familiar with them?
Oh, yeah.
And, depending on the lot and the location, they may be very interested. It turns out they do own the easement on the Goodwill property, so they would probably find this very attractive to add to it. Obviously, we love to, make things bigger.
They love contiguous.
Yes, contiguous lots, and depending on, wildlife routes, it's great to add pieces to it, kind of filling in the puzzle, if you will. And the other option that I'm familiar with, at least, is the federal agency, and it's the same folks you previously,
Yeah.
Natural Resource Conservation Service. When they have the funds, they actually pay out more money.
They do, and
it's probably the most lucrative.
Fortuitous on my part to, who is Don Black, and I don't know who remembers.
Yeah.
He was the Stratford County Forest. Really great guy, good fellow.
And
And he mentioned that.
yeah.
And that's how I got hooked up with him.
Yeah, and we do have somebody, last I knew anyway, somebody from NRCS right here in Barrington. I think she deals with the whole county, but she happens to live in Barrington, so that's handy. From our point of view, I guess we'd probably encourage you to go with sell, just because it works out easiest in terms of
And I'm
buying land.
familiar with them enough to feel comfortable, talking with them, seeing what their approach would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, if gentleman by the name of Dwayne Hyde, and I know some of us walked the property up on Pond Hill Road, and personally had roughly about the same amount. And, but he wanted to preserve the trails. There was actually a rock out there that had a plaque on commemorating his mother. That's why he was doing it. And I'm not sure where the project's at, but it was in an area where they wanted to accumulate contiguous, because it's out near the Rochester Reservoir there on Route Pond.
Yeah.
So,
But as you may know, South has quite a lot of land in between
the more I drive
and
on
that's forest.
see the sign, Southeast.
Yeah.
it's a sign on anything.
I think they're probably the biggest, not necessarily landowner, but land manager, right? In our town. So that's
My understanding is they do both. They do purchases and also just hold the easement.
Yes.
So,
Right, that's right.
And that really starts with your wish to
Right.
want to keep control of the land.
right.
And obviously, easements and actually owning acreage is a different price. That comes down to what are you looking to get out of this?
It's interesting. I haven't looked at it from what do I want to get out of this other than to protect the land.
Well, that's
So
very nice.
it's, I don't want to walk away from something that's available, but I want to make sure that the priority is it's set that it's the land I'm concerned.
But I think if you were to reach out to Dwayne Hyde and tell him that this is the lot, the tax map and the lot number, and it's contiguous to the Goodwill area, I think you get a call back. At least,
Yeah.
maybe, you know, if you want to come out and hike it with them, or
Sure.
show it off.
And there's some great people.
Yes.
Just wonder.
Because they've got a staff that putting together an easement. They come and they talk and they hear your issues and stuff, and they would write something up. You would probably behoove you to also, you know, get some legal help to look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But
When you say legal help, look at it. You look at the, like a
well, the easement,
contract.
you're giving away the easement, you're giving
Okay.
away.
It's
I was looking at the landowner.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, that's further downstream. Once you've decided a path, you probably want someone that you're paying to look out for your interests. To make
Sure.
Okay, does this legal document do what you want? And for you, it could be,
Yeah.
I want to preserve the land. I want to make it accessible for people to share it. And I want X dollars for to give up these rights.
Yeah, as far as the money goes, you know, if you have an accountant, you should talk to them about this, because they would be knowledgeable about that. I think it would be good for you to have the same kind of a conversation that you're having with us would be good to have with Dwayne Hyde, because he would have a slightly different perspective than we do on this. And then I mean, the decision is yours. You really have to decide what it is you want to do with it, retain ownership, pass ownership on, you know, and get some money for the land. I would tell you that the NRCS projects have pulled back radically in recent years. And my property didn't qualify because there were wetlands grants, and even though I have some significant wetlands, they didn't qualify. I don't know if your property would qualify or not.
And it all depends on what kind of funds they have, and, you know,
Right.
Yeah,
it's from year to year, but
because I don't think this area is anywhere near a current location, so it's probably not of highest value.
maybe not, but
Like
it's
that
worth looking
Yeah.
into.
that chunk they bought at the bottom of Long Pond on the Isinglass. That was a score for them because of all the species that like it there.
So you got Dwayne's contact info, or
Yeah, look at
it's
the,
just Dwayne at cell page.
I get the,
Email and
what's it
phone,
called? Email.
and the address is there if you
Yep.
don't know where their new facility is down
Yeah.
the road. Because you might be going there.
The other thing that we probably should look at, and it's really easy to do, is apply to the Natural Heritage Service or whatever it is, to see if there are any threatened or endangered species. Because in this corner of the property, because of the creek running through, you never know.
Yeah, there's a peat bog. It's an unusual,
Well,
it's not a typical one.
Yeah, I don't know whether it has that feel when I walk through what I call muck and peat. If I were to start
Quite
digging.
a-
You know, but if that attracts, if that's a habitat of protected species, it could be of greater interest. I'm not up on my plantings journal. Likes, dislikes.
So I hope that's enough to get you started.
Oh, yes.
You know, you're welcome to come back if you have other questions or ideas.
I'm sure I am.
And then, you know, Paul's a great resource. And
Yeah, Jim, you can come by and we can look into some of this stuff. Yeah, I know how to make that application because I just did one, and it's very quick and easy. So we can look at a few things.
you
That's a
might,
good point, because I have absolutely no tolerance or patience for applications.
I don't have much, but this one is easy.
well, the good thing.
Do
is,
you
know,
have an accountant, Jim? Do you work with an accountant for your taxes?
One that I had when I started the business, and that was in the late 70s, out of Portsmouth. So he knows me and the family is probably better than I do. Yeah.
Okay,
guy.
well, he'd be a good person to have a conversation with about this because he could give you the different tax situations in detail. And
Yep.
that's important.
Paul, you know an attorney, right, who deals with these things, just for reference?
I would have to look up his name. He is very expensive. You know, the deal that I had with the town was that they would cover all the expenses in return for the access that I granted. Now, it didn't work out that way. I ended up having a few $1,000s of expenses because of that lawyer. So if you use someone like that, he's very good. You know, he's probably the most respected one in the state on these issues, but you really want to limit the amount that you use someone like that.
Yeah.
So,
We can
So-
talk about that.
so does that answer your questions for the month?
It does, it answers the questions and it makes me realize I've got to formulate now what each one of those options need. And it's sort of like following a trail. When you start it, you just don't know where it's going to go because you don't know what you don't know.
Well, the good thing is
Doug,
to work with.
can you give Jim an intro to Dwayne Hyde?
What is this? What, Paul?
Doug, could you give Jim an intro to Dwayne Hyde just so you know he's not calling in cold?
It's information. I mean, you mean like send an email saying, please look
Yeah.
into this? Yeah, I could do that.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean, I know.
Do you have an email?
Yes, I do.
Need that.
Yeah.
Include you in on the discussion.
Your email.
Lowercase J Rivet 052 at
052.
gmail.com.
Yeah.
And my wife will check that. I mean,
You like have email as much as applications?
just about.
All right. Well, we'll see if we can get Dwayne's attention anyway.
Does
It
he
just
ever
started.
use the field for verboses?
Yes. Andy does, Chris.
Right.
Chris and, well, AJ does some snowmobiling down there, Patrick. And there's a couple of other people right down.
Yeah, so that would be an example of, you know, things you'd want to
Yeah.
spell out that,
Yeah.
you know, maybe you want to allow snowmobiles, but not dirt bikes or, you know.
Very much, yeah.
Which generally is, you know, frowned upon.
Yeah, and there are already snowmobile trails within Goodwill because they
Right.
manage some of the trails out there.
Yeah.
Snowmobile trails don't bother me too much. I'm not a big fan of dirt bikes. Mountain bikes would be fine.
Yeah, and that we generally allow that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, but again, these are all things you want
Oh,
to
yeah.
spell out.
Yeah.
Here. So.
I don't want to hold up your evening.
So that's fine. I mean, we don't get too many opportunities to kind of work through the details. So it's helpful, you know.
I appreciate Paul's offering to make the suggestion to meet with you folks. So thank you, Paul.
Sure thing, Jim.
All right, well, you're
Okay.
welcome to stick around if you'd like to hear more of what we're doing, or if you need to take off, that's
No, I
fine too.
hang out for a bit.
All right. Get back to the basic agenda. Minutes, I guess we have two minutes to approve. What was the previous one?
The
April?
first one was the one where Connor came and talked about the
Right.
dog.
Right.
That was one, the first
Yeah.
one.
Do you want me to pull them up?
That was,
No, I don't think we need to
that was
go
April
over
25th.
detail.
Okay.
I mean, does anybody have any questions, edits for that one? Look good. I looked it over. It looked pretty good.
Why do we postpone the approval of the April minutes?
Just because I hadn't had a chance to look it over, and then like predecessor, Ken, suggested, my mentor, said maybe we should let him look over it. So that's why we held off. All right, so we'll approve that as submitted. And so the last one, May 23rd, anybody have any comments on that? Yes.
Yeah, looked good to me.
All right, so we'll move that as submitted as well. Treasurer's report?
Not much activity. We earned interest at the end of the month of $1,654.76, giving us an end of May balance of $631, $733, and 37 cents. I just sent that to you, so that you should be all set.
Yeah, I have.
All right, thanks. Anything else on the financial front? Good on bills or whatever?
No, there is something at the end we're going to talk about, some legislation that impacts us.
Okay. Well,
You might have seen that.
on that, yeah. Okay, so the other new business is this solar site selection criteria. I don't know if folks had a chance to look it over. I know it's like 4 pages. There's a lot of meat in there, and most of it, I should say, is kind of, it's technical. It's more for the or at least the energy committee really is focusing on that aspect of it. Obviously, we're more concerned with the conservation impacts, or hopefully avoiding impacts of any solar development. Paul, you're the primary author. Do you want to give an intro or an overview of it?
Yeah, I mean, the executive summary and the conclusion are sort of, good overall summaries. Basically, what we're recommending is that we really prioritize behind the meter, which generally means installations that are going to be on a rooftop. Payback is better on them. There's less impact. And there are other, and if you are going to develop a system that's called in front of the meter, those are generally not on a rooftop. They're usually larger in scale. And they don't have the financial benefits. You don't get some of the advantages that you would have with the behind the meter system. We would recommend, if the town is interested in pursuing that, it's probably worthwhile to pursue it in conjunction with a partner, and it should be done on disturbed lands. I mean, Doug knows, and Pat, I don't know if you've ever heard me talk about it, but your brother Steve's property, I think, would be perfect for something like this. I've tried, I went over the other day and he wasn't there. I've been meaning to talk to him. I think some of this could be done on a lease basis. He could retain ownership of the land. It all depends on what you can come up with for a partner. But basically what I'm saying in here, if you've read it, is that public perception of development for these purposes is not favorable when you're cutting down trees, using agricultural land, using nice land that's certainly not land that's under conservation or even might be considered for conservation in the future. So really you want to look at disturbed sites. Gravel pits are perfect. They need to be in close proximity to three-phase power lines, which in Barrington means Route 9 or Route 125. And that's pretty much what I said.
Well, for the folks that aren't familiar, could you describe the land that you're talking about, Steve Lindsay's?
Pat, I'm going to let you do that.
Oh, no, wait.
I mean, just
Well,
basically.
Can you put it up, Paul?
Oh, sure. I closed that, but I can bring that up.
But basically, it's a ground, right? It's a sand
I probably know that better than.
There you go.
Okay.
It's the pit on Bunker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's this right here.
And it's what, 25 or more acres? The acres?
I've never even looked that up. And I would, so it's, I don't know why it's subdivided here, but he does have it subdivided. So there's 2 parcels.
Yeah.
Never seen a 2 card. So that's about 10 acres. hang on, this is invisible to you, but I can't see this. And this one, which has significant amount of wetlands on it, and Pat, you may know more about those wetlands than I do. That is close to 100 acres.
But
So
to
there,
develop
it's not,
half of that, right? You exclude the wetlands. I mean, forested area.
yeah,
I mean, it's not like planning.
The western half of that looks like it could be a site also.
yeah, it's like a third. Pat, do you know what the rest of this property is like? Is it really boggy and stuff? I'm not familiar with that.
I know going down Province Road where, it goes to pavement to dirt, it's pretty wet on
Yep.
either side.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot of
Yeah,
places-
right, it is.
Is good drainage and dry, high ground. Is, as you go down Bumford Road, Steve's pit begins right there. There's a gate.
Right here,
And
right
if you
here.
go in, there's a structure on the left, and I think that's what he has subdivided on. And then straight ahead and to the right. Oh, boy, if I had to guess.
The rock pile is down here,
That's roughly half of the 100, so yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah,
or a
and this-
third, yeah. And they're actually putting in a cell tower that he's leasing the land to the cell company somewhere in here now.
yeah, and it's, move the cursor again and I'll see. Alrighty. Yeah, probably right around there, yes.
But anyway, the idea of using this as an example is just, this is obviously disturbed land or that portion of
It
it.
is great exposure.
And it's right close to 125, so you wouldn't need to build a whole new, conduit to get the power out.
You've got sun from sun up to sundown.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think a lot of routes
It's really
now,
open.
it's tree lined.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, and it is also, it's sheltered from the main roads, and somewhat sheltered from the limited number of abutters, but that would remain to be seen.
Others would mostly be on Weekly Ponds.
Yeah, it's like it.
Well, if he ever builds it, Rob Leslie's new place would be on 63rd.
Yeah, is that here? No, that's here, I think.
Yeah, I think that's where he's.
Yeah, Tactical LLC. This is Russell's property, but my understanding is that he's not going to be building there. And he's probably going to get rid of that land.
Well, I mean, before we get too wrapped up in the logistics there.
Yeah,
That's just an example, and we didn't really explain what the origin of this, I mean, I think we referenced it previously, but basically it was the select board, I guess, put the request out that we come up with some criteria. And again, this isn't writing the rules, right? I mean, these aren't necessarily going to be the zoning ordinance, but the idea is, let's set some parameters. Let's say what we want. Obviously, it's up to the planning board and the select board to come up with the final rules.
And this is only for municipal installation, right?
Right.
If someone wanted to come up and.
Although as Paul
No.
was suggesting, it could be a
Yeah.
partnership. And it can also be between towns. I don't think it's in the document.
that's right.
But I don't think you mentioned that we could do it with a neighboring town, and that might make most sense if you're going to generate, several megawatts. It may be more than what we need, but it might be enough for us and Lee or Nottingham, who knows?
Madbury's right next
Yeah.
to it.
And they don't need to be even contiguous, I don't think. But anyway, the idea is that there's a lot
They
of
don't.
options.
They don't need to be contiguous. They just have to use Eversource as their utility.
Yeah, which we all do. At least in the
Not every
sky.
town, but yeah.
Yeah.
mostly.
Paul, do you want to say a little bit more about the kind of the conservation aspects, the land use criteria? I know you have a list in there, but just as far
Yeah,
as
well, do I? I haven't looked at it in a few days, but I mean, there basically what I said is we don't want to use lands that are under consideration for conservation. We don't want to use lands that are forested. We really want to avoid things like that. Some of the other technical characteristics exclude steep slopes and poor soils because they don't hold photovoltaic racking structures well. But one of the main issues is that public perception of solar sites and land utilization for solar when you're using land that people see as forested and has wildlife, it's just not well accepted. And there have been a number of studies done, and you really want to avoid that. And I think we need to stress that. Visual impacts are important to people. What people perceive as the general character of the area. They don't want to see that changed on account of a big solar installation. So they sort of don't want to see them, is what it amounts to.
As we found in the past. Folks, if you haven't looked at the land use regulations recently, the ordinance, there is a solar site ordinance. It's chapter 21, I believe. It's like the last one, I guess the most recent, before the last town meeting, of course. But and it does specify a bunch of things about buffers and not being too visible and all that. And I'm sure it was kind of pretty boilerplate. My understanding, it was thrown together pretty quickly. I don't know if you were in on that at all. It's prior to your involvement. But anyway, we're not. What I'm saying is we're not starting from scratch. But obviously, we'd like to enhance that. Paul, you've looked over those rules, right?
I actually, embarrassingly, Doug, I have not. But one of the tasks that I do have for the Energy Committee this year is to look at those and to get a model ordinance from Clean Energy New Hampshire and make some proposals about changing our zoning ordinance so it's more in line with modern needs and modern perceptions.
And it, of course, includes our criteria or whatever needs to be included that
right
comes out of what we're saying.
Yeah, this is more of a white paper for the select board and Connor, but yeah.
So we have to vote on recommending it to them?
I think that would be good. Do folks have any suggestions or changes they'd like to make? Does it all sound good, what you've heard and read, generally? And it hasn't been voted on, or I don't know if it's been looked at by many of the Energy Committee. I mean, has Jack looked it over? I'm just wondering about like technical aspects, if there's going to be changes to it.
Actually, we did previously approve that Jack, Rob, and I would put it together. So from the Energy Committee's perspective, this is ready to go, and it's waiting for any additions or modifications by the Conservation Commission.
Okay. All right. So we are kind of approving it or whatever, giving our stamp to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there aren't further comments, or we could have some discussion, but would somebody like to make a motion that we approve this as we think it's?
I'll make the motion that we adopt this. Well, first, does anyone want to modify anything?
I noticed one
If
little
not,
actually,
go on.
stuff. I assume we could do some last minute editing, but I wondered too about, I guess in the conclusion, I thought it was worth mentioning neighboring towns as well. You mentioned third parties. I don't know if that covers another town, but remember where that is, but
About 2/3 of the way down.
Yeah, fourth line
Partnership
at the
with
bottom.
third parties.
right. Does that make sense to add in or neighboring towns?
That's fine. Yeah, it sort of is supposed to include any of that because this could be commercial, it could be municipal. It can be any of those things.
Yeah.
But
I just figured it's worth kind of emphasizing that It's not necessarily a private thing. And of course, you get economies of scale, bring in other people. Any
That
other
okay?
suggestions?
All right, so I make a motion that we accept.
Actually, Paul was
Oh,
making a
okay.
motion, I think, just to be. Paul, did you have?
I'll make a motion. Yeah, I'll make a motion that the Conservation Commission adopt this document as a white paper for the select board.
Okay. You have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Unopposed? Unanimous. All right, great, good work. Okay, so we'll move on. There aren't any cases from the planning board. So we just have some updates and old business.
Well,
Um,
Doug, I actually have something that I assume it's gonna go to the planning board. This is this Chris Morris proposal.
yeah, I realized I didn't put it in the agenda normally. So yeah, why don't you go ahead?
Okay,
Yeah.
so did we discuss this at the last meeting?
I think just that there was a request.
Okay, so basically what it is this piece of land, so this is the Madbury town line, this is Route 9. This is his property. I don't know when the home was built. I think it's been there quite a while. And he is proposing putting on a garage, and the only location he can do it has basically complete impingement on the wetland buffer. So it would basically go all the way in as far as from what he said. So I figured this was a good opportunity to do an analysis on the site. And I did a complete one. This is the first time I've done that, including an application to what is it called? The Natural Heritage Bureau or something like that. Noteworthiness. Yeah, the Natural Heritage Bureau. And the wetland that he has, it's right on Route 9. It doesn't have much in the way of ecosystem services. It's clearly been pretty disturbed. So I went through the list and with the method that I should actually do a seminar on for all of you. And it came out that it has one ecosystem service. So what that would lead us to do is to give a recommendation to the planning board that the buffer could be reduced to as little as 10 feet. So that's where we are.
Needs, or I mean, not that it's just a voluntary thing, but is that close to what I mean, he said he was going to go into it completely right up to the end.
I don't know, Doug. I can let me pull up and see I don't know what he had in the way of drawings. I didn't look very carefully at that.
Seemed like it wasn't real obvious what the distance was, but
No, and I don't know how detailed his plans are. He had talked to Andy Knapp, and Andy sort of directed him to talk to us. I don't know if I've got it.
What's the existing buffer?
excuse me,
The existing buffer is how many feet?
50 feet, yeah. But again, it's, pretty arbitrary. And so the idea of the Barrington method is coming up with a way to be more nuanced and, if it could be less, or, whether it needs to be 50 feet. So we've been,
I think I would have to bring up my email, Doug, in which case this whole session would be disallowed from from YouTube. I don't know if I want to do that or not. That's not. These were, I think, the files that this was from what we got back from the Natural Heritage Bureau. I think these are all the files that I created. Oh, what? No,
did have an app, I
that's
thought.
the request.
So
Hang on a second. Let me stop sharing my screen and go to my mail. You're not seeing my screen now, right now, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So anyway, this is, just another opportunity to try out the method, and it's voluntary at this point. It hasn't been, approved or recommended by the planning board, but the idea is to see, how does this work? Does it meet the needs of, homeowner and us and all that? So
So this is something that would normally, the final say would be the zoning board,
planning board.
planning board.
Well, I don't know.
So what reaction are you getting from the planning board so far?
Well, they were involved in the development of it. Some members, right?
Yeah.
So the zoning board grants the hardship buffers based to reduce the 50.
Yeah, that may,
setback.
I don't know.
But then, so this is a tool for them to use to kind of make more of an educated decision.
Right, yeah, I think that's the idea. Again, though, it's not in the rules, it hasn't been
Yeah.
voted on, so it's not, a done deal, but we wanted to kind of try it out, see how it works, and field test it, basically. So, we'll see. You got it, yeah, that's the map.
Yeah, this is it. So hang on, let me zoom in. So here is, let's see. This is the edge of 50 feet. So this 50-foot buffer is what I believe is he's delineating as the distance from the actual edge of the wetland, which he did have a wetland scientist evaluate. So you can see the garage, well, it doesn't go all the way across, I guess.
Not clear whether it's 10 or 5 or 15.
Right.
But yeah,
It's probably at least 10. That would, but I don't know exactly. I mean, it's hard to tell because he only has a single point. He doesn't show what it does beyond here. But I assume this is the closest point. He doesn't say what the distance is.
It says it's 14.9 feet.
That sounds like a measurement.
Oh,
So
yeah, it does. You're right. Right.
Isn't the lower one closer? Seems like the other
This
corner.
one down here.
Yeah. I mean, if it's the dashed line, I don't know. Is that the
That's
west one?
when it says 50 feet.
Oh, no, I guess
I
that's
think- Yeah, I think that's further away.
okay.
I think this is the closest point. And so it actually, good catch there, Jack. It does actually align. What he's asking to do would align with what the recommendation we'd be making to the planning board.
Yeah, so I guess the method works, right? Or at least it seems to,
So far,
in this case.
so far, right,
Yeah.
right.
So, well, great.
So we should, I guess the question is, Doug, I don't know that this has actually been submitted to the planning board. I don't think it has. I think it's gone, he talked to Andy Knapp and then he came to us. Should I just tell him that he should go ahead and submit to the planning board? And when we get notification, we'll tell them what our results are, or should we let them know what our results are? And they can be very confused because only Andy has ever heard of this project.
Oh, weren't there other planning board members involved at some point?
I don't,
I don't know. If John
were there?
Yeah. I know there was
Oh,
one or two.
Aware of it versus intimate as he is. That's
Well, no, probably not, but they were in the meetings, right? I mean, yeah, I attended one.
I
of them.
didn't- Okay, I didn't realize there had been any meetings about this.
Well, not this specifically. I'm talking about the Barrington method, just the.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, right.
I'm not gonna, oh, I've never heard of this. I mean, there's,
No, they should be pretty facile with that, although, they know they haven't seen many examples. This will really be the first one, I think, that they see that's, got a complete analysis as part of it. No, but the question is, should we send it to them now? I mean, it's fine with me.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, you know, it's all advisory anyway. It's not like we determine what's what. And I mean,
Right.
technically, right, legally, they still have to go through the 9.6, I gather, to,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah, they
So,
have to do the whole thing.
yeah, so this is just kind of informational at this point. So, yeah, it seems like
Okay.
if, you know, you're comfortable with what it came out and it looks to meet his needs, it's not going to ruffle any feathers or cause any,
Right,
you know.
right. You want me to contact Andy Knapp and, tell him what I got and ask him how to forward it on or?
Yeah, I mean, it probably should go through the chair, through John Driscoll. I mean, just to be,
Okay,
I
okay.
don't know.
Board to board probably should be the chairs.
Paul, is there an official name for this approach? I know we've talked about it for years, but
Barrington method.
yeah, I know other than the Barrington method.
Right? I know it's not very
It-
informative.
It's not, so if you look at the document, do I have the document? I got the doc. Hang on, let me pull it up. Uh, oops.
While he's doing that, let me ask my question.
Yeah, sorry.
The original,
So it's the,
Paul, hold on, just
Yeah.
Steve had a question.
the original footprint of the house encroached on the 50-foot buffer.
Right.
Apparently preceded the establishment of the 50-foot buffer, right? Building the house.
Well, not necessarily, but that isn't the issue. It's the extension, the garage.
Understood.
Yeah.
Right. I just wondered if the fact that the original structure already encroached on that buffer was a mitigating factor or impacted it.
it does not actually.
Yeah, I don't think it does. But even if it did, you'd have to go back to the date it was built and all that, which I don't know if it's.
Yeah, that's not actually what I'm asking. I'm just asking
Yeah.
if that has any impact on the proposed garage consideration. No.
And Paul, that shouldn't, right?
No, it has no impact.
Yeah, but that has been an issue. It's complicated history, but depending on when a house was built and what they're adding to it and all that, but we won't go there.
Yeah,
But-
there was a section, I think, of the zoning laws as far as if you've already got property that's already violated setbacks
Yeah.
and stuff like that,
Yeah.
then it's a non-conforming lot. And I think there is some impact on your ability to like I can't put an addition on my
Right.
place, but I don't think that applies to this. They still
Yeah.
get to ask for this. And we're just providing a slightly more nuanced level of analysis.
Right.
And
Right.
if it works for the parties involved, maybe it does get voted in on a warrant some year.
Yeah. Yeah, so Paul, I'm fine if you want to just forward it on to somebody.
To John.
Plan. Yeah, I guess John Driscoll would be the.
I'll copy Andy because he knows about it. So, if John has a question about what is this, he's never seen any of it, Andy will be able to explain that. But here's the name, it's the Barrington Wetland Assessment Method.
Okay.
You're shortening it. Yeah. Officially, it's the vote. Wham.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how
Could be heavy breathing chopper.
All right. So is that enough for now then? Paul, are you good with that?
I'm good.
Okay, so it's for future reference. We're using the method and it seems to be working out. We expect there will be other ones where we'll be more of a conflict.
Yeah. And I wasn't joking. I mean, I did tell Ken that I would be glad to present a seminar on how to do this. So now that I am somewhat familiar with it, it really only takes about a half an hour. It doesn't take long at all.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it'd be good. And obviously it would be good to have several of us be up to speed on it so that we don't just depend on you. Or you don't want to do all of them in the future.
Right.
Okay, well, we'll work on that. So back to other old business. The trail interconnectivity is we mentioned at the last meeting. The folks in planning and I guess the select board instigated this, or again?
Yeah, and there's a lot of interest, of course, the town center advisory committee.
Right. To look at how we can make our town more interconnected. So they formed a committee, and besides myself, John Wallace was there for the Trails Committee. Obviously, that's another big piece of it. And then other people from the town officials, trying to think, the Snowmobile Association, the rec committee, one or two other people as well. But anyway, it's a pretty good group of folks, and of course Connor was kind of leading the effort. We were just kind of starting out, kind of let's put stuff out on the table and see what looks like it needs attention. There were a number of items that came up. Oh, do you have a list there?
That was
I jotted
from
down a
email.
few things. Yeah, it was in that email. Did that go to everybody?
Well, John sent it to the Trails Committee.
Oh, okay, so you saw it. Yeah.
You were.
Yeah, and I don't want to go through every item, but clearly the town center is an issue that, or kind of what started this was how can we make it more accessible and be able to go from park that they're going to build someday to the library or to the schools or to the town hall. One obvious thing that you need to develop further, at least work out arrangements, is the railroad right of way that isn't really an official trail, but snowmobilers use it, in the wintertime. Other people use it informally, but I don't think the Trails Committee has really done anything with it or had any, it's kind of out of your.
We could talk about it, but the first thing would be is, do we have the rights to even put a blaze on it,
Right, yeah. So it's a little complicated in that even though it's a right of way, it seems to be owned by various property owners. The stretch we're mostly concerned about, of course, running along 125 right over there, is the Caliph Swenson family, I guess, mainly. I think there may be one or two other landowners in there. But anyway, the idea is that, how can we make that more usable? And of course, it goes right up alongside the library. There's actually a little trail of sorts already through the woods there. But beyond that, we want to look at other trails in town. As far as I know, we've never really sat down with snowmobilers and talked about snowmobile trails versus hiking trails, and the fact that there ain't a whole lot of snow these days, and they're like, well, we're not really using them as much. And they have a particular issue that several of their trails depend on Swains Lake being frozen because they go across the lake to get from one end of the trail to the other, and obviously it doesn't work well when it's liquid, thin ice. So they would want to find alternate routes or find another way to connect things. We certainly have other trails that we'd like to develop. For example, behind the town hall here, it was brought up that we don't have any ADA wheelchair accessible trails, although we could. And there's certainly ones that are more possible, ones that are old roads like Tibbetts Road, or of course the railroad right away is pretty darn flat. It's
Village Place has got some flat trails too.
yeah. There's several others certainly, and I think even in Stonehouse Forest there may be some trails that could be.
That's what.
The roads were pretty well graded. So anyway, we're just kind of working through some of the options. And then of course another big thing is funding. If there are grants available to enhance the trails or build a bridge or bridges as needed. It was mentioned that it might be nice to rebuild the bridge going over the Isinglass, behind the Schultz property, now the O'Neill property, just for an example. So that's kind of an overview of what they started with. I think the next meeting, which is coming up this Tuesday, the 18th, we're going to try to prioritize, kind of look at what, the low-hanging fruit, things that maybe need more attention sooner.
One thing I keep mentioning, and I think your committee's talked about it too, is that the that section up by Elfmead where the parking lot is, and they want to open up that kind of wooded area, which is part of the town center. And that would be part of the connectivity there.
Mhm.
And there's been discussion about having a large kiosk that has a map, exterior outdoor map that shows all the trails in Barrington and whether they're snowmobile accessible, walking, ADA or whatever. So hopefully that stays in the discussion, that we can have some sort of, making Barrington kind of a destination place and have something like that in the center.
Yeah, and I kind of see it as, you'd find one place to park, behind Caleb's or whatever, and then you could walk to several locations, whether it's shopping or want to go to a movie or get a pizza or come to the library. That would be nice.
Yeah, I mean, we could, I don't want to say sell it, but it could be the Barrington, urban hike, or find a better term, but I mean, you don't want to go out in the woods where there's nothing there, but here's a place where you can go to an 1867 general store, visit a library, pick up some Christmas decorations,
Right.
maybe go look at the Malago Brook, whatever. And, you can mix things up and they're all relatively close distance versus,
Like park trails. I'm talking about like maybe the perimeter trail around the 13 acres or something like that.
Right. And the connections to other ones, you
Yeah,
have
and
this
that one will be
snowmobile
flat
trail.
and easy.
Yeah.
Because face it, our population's gonna want more flat and easy trails.
Right.
And ADA wants to.
Yeah. So that's all possibilities.
There's no current pedestrian crossing though at the traffic lights, right?
Yeah, and that's certainly one of the other, I think, key items that I think everybody agreed. That was, previously a big discussion with the land use master plan piece. And actually, Connor had a kind of disappointing fantasy, but hopefully someday could be reality. I don't know if you can pull up are we at the intersection of 125 and Route 9?
Yeah.
Yeah, expensive to set up.
Well, yeah,
But yeah.
and this would be, Department of Transportation, DOT is probably 80%, or it would be some split between the town and the state.
Yeah.
And, I think there's more money being made available for those.
You're
types of
talking about like
things.
that pedestrian bridge over 2125.
Well, that would be the, high end.
I was thinking
gold plated
Jack, I was thinking
approach.
push button that has a
Yeah.
crosswalk.
Right.
Cross-
Right.
Even that's a lot of bucks, And so, so there's the obvious one, to get across 125, because obviously you got the school, you got all these new houses, all these, townhouses coming in here and here and
Yeah.
and perhaps more. But then also to get across Route 9, if you want to get to the library, you got to cross Route 9 there,
Right,
which sometimes is difficult. What Connor threw out, if you could zoom in again, sorry. He said these, I don't know the exact properties, but adjacent to TurboCam, they actually have, I think, already bought, I don't know if it's 33. Can you scroll down a bit?
Yeah.
South? Yeah, I think it's either this or this. One of these they already own, I guess, and they're looking to put in workforce housing. And then you've got the other development, which I think is 36, where the townhouses are going in. I think
It's
that's
the only one big enough to support it there, so I guess.
probably, yeah. Anyway, so Connor said, well, what if we created a trail that, cut through these two developments and then came over to 125, and he actually had this idea of going under the highway, assuming the water table isn't too high or whatever. And maybe it was because of the Baroda Chuck underpass we know about for the cows, the cow tunnel.
Oh,
They-
right.
that-
Yeah.
Anyway, it would probably be cheaper than building a bridge. That's the point. But then you could have, access all the time. Obviously, it's still a lot of work, but the idea is that you could get across 125 without going to too much trouble. So anyway, that was one thing he threw out as a possibility that obviously would cost a bit of bucks, but it would be an interesting way to interconnect things without having to just wander down Route 9 or 25. So
you should stop over at Co Brown and check out their tunnel.
yeah, I know they have one there.
It's pretty elaborate.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I mean, obviously you need lighting.
safety, accessible, the ramping and all that as well.
Right, yeah. But,
Yeah,
you know,
you can't have a tunnel underneath that you access by stairs nowadays. It's gonna-
yeah, right, yeah, it would certainly be a ramp, so you need a lot of room.
Which end up probably
Yeah.
becoming a tiny skateboard park.
Right. But anyway, that's an example of some of the possibilities, you know, that would get us beyond the current, you know, total segmentation of the downtown.
Well, when you think of it, we talk a lot about hiking. That's part of our mission, and yet all the hiking is pretty much out on the periphery.
Right.
And I know years ago they said that the plan was could you hike across Barrington? Well, that took quite too much land. But if you could hike to the areas of interest in the center of town, it would be nice because you don't see too many people walking out here because we build about 6 inches of shoulder in most of our roads, and no one wants to walk 125.
Right.
But if we had something like this,
Yeah. Yeah.
it'd change the flavor of things.
Yeah, and I kind of assumed going into it that we would talk about the existing conserved lands, you know, like Village Place, for example, is the one that's relatively accessible, right? It's a short walk from downtown, from the center. But certainly there are some others, but there aren't a lot. Like you say, most of them are out periphery or, you know, or a mile or more away from downtown. But anyway, there may be ways to interconnect more of them. So,
There's a path that at the end of Dante's restaurant parking lot that goes behind Turbican.
yeah,
Turbican.
Right.
To the
I think that's kind of what
Trail.
Connor was referencing.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure it's not a formal trail really, but
Yeah.
obviously somebody's using it.
It's been there quite a while.
More people could use it. Yeah. So if anybody has any burning ideas, things you want to see, I know we talked about this at the last meeting, but like I said, there will be another meeting Tuesday. I don't know if we have particular priorities that we want to emphasize or guidance for me. What would be your first priority?
Well, eventually you probably have to look at and see, you know, first of all, from a more focused on the Trails Committee, how much people expect the Trails Committee to do any of this? Because most of the trails that get cut by us, and we're
Right.
a handful of amateurs. Dan's one of them.
Yeah. Yeah, but what would be your wish list, you know, and obviously.
Well, related to that is, you know, we also happen to be the Concom, and we do have some money that isn't designated for a dam yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it could end up involving some of our funds to make some of this happen.
Right.
Just saying, be aware of that.
Oh, yeah.
Because,
Yeah.
you know, we have a lot of ideas here, and that was the objective of this meeting. It looks like what's documented.
Right.
Now, one of them, they do talk about there might be grants, but there isn't a whole lot of discussion about where the money's gonna come
Well,
from.
I think that is something
Yeah,
that will
it's
be
the future. And
pursued.
when you brainstorm, you don't
Yeah.
bring up money first. You
Right,
bring up
yeah.
good
Are they,
ideas.
Doug, are they proposing what trails and prioritizing how they envision the trail system being developed? Because someone should come up with something like that.
Yeah, and I think that is part of the idea. And I should perhaps I mentioned too at this point that the planning department, Vanessa approached me just like the other day that we could create a new master plan chapter, I guess you call it, dealing with open space and recreation. I guess that's kind of a term that's been used elsewhere. And that might also provide some expertise, obviously, from the Stratford Planning Commission to develop that better, you know, in terms of mapping out where these trails might interconnect or could be built, et cetera. I am to look at what Connor passed along, you know, some resources. They had one from 2021, you know, just a few years ago. And they had some trails that are no longer in existence or trails that don't really connect. And, you know, it wasn't meant to be a guide to, you know, where to hike in Barrington, but, you know, obviously there needs to be some updating of the.
Yeah, we're in the process of updating existing maps, and we're also waiting on certain projects.
Right.
The Leighton Forest project, what are they gonna do or not do?
Right.
The
This.
Mount Misery up here, engineering project.
Yeah, there's several pieces.
And so we gotta, as far as, we do have a map, that, yeah, it is outdated. It doesn't show what I call the Paul Panish end of Goodwill. Because we haven't developed that because the logging's not.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And some of these things are just going to take time. I mean, I don't think people are assuming it's going to be done tomorrow.
But I think I remember I brought the planning commission's master plan project because they talked about land use and they made some comments about conservation land and stuff like that. And that's how I brought it to this group and said, I'll probably get involved here, make sure we get involved. And if the end result here is we get a chapter on, open lands and recreation use, that would be great.
Yeah. I mean, those are really two separate things. I didn't want to suggest that they're
Yeah.
linked, but obviously the one would help the other and, and it might be another avenue for folks to get involved as well.
Yeah, this might sound a little funny, but I know there was a group, I think they met on Wednesday mornings that walked the cemetery.
Okay, yes.
And that's
my
a
next comment.
really, I mean, for elderly people, that's a great place to walk. It's
Sure.
level and everything.
Yeah.
So that's another option
Yeah.
right there. It's close by.
Yeah, I don't recall if somebody mentioned that, but
I've been mentioning it. I've been wanting to put
Yeah.
that plug in because a lot of people, myself included, so it's selfish interest. But I walk the cemetery and I think I've mentioned years ago with conservation, the opportunity to actually make the cemetery more appealing, better tree planting, things like that. So, a lot of cemeteries are arboretums, they do things, like the Arbor Cemetery.
yeah.
So I have, and there's a beautiful bridge in good areas, a lot of things that could be done. I'm thinking of working with Barrington boomers. And it's very meditative to walk. It's almost like a labyrinth, walk the cemetery. And so
Right.
almost any time of day, every day of the week, there are people walking the cemetery.
Yeah.
I had no idea.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Now, is there a
Yeah.
place off of where the graves are? And, on either any of the
There
sides?
are little
that-
bits that
that
people
have
do,
a
but it's
grave?
mostly just in the paths.
It's-
You don't have to worry about traffic. It's just
And the stones are
Where
interesting.
people come.
I mean, if you look at their policies,
Yeah.
they don't want to see, they don't want you planting a tree next to your grandfather's.
Well, I mean,
So
there are limits, obviously.
It might have to be a
done.
nice stone-lined planter area that, as far as they're concerned, it really won't add to their work because they can just mow around it. What they don't now have to do is have to worry about working around urns and planters and trees at every other gravesite.
Yeah. I mean, that's the common mentality in most cemeteries. But then you have Mount Auburn, right? The homestead built and developed.
Right.
It's about Mount Auburn down in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
I know. I've. All right. Well, there's one in Concord too. I think.
No, it's in Cambridge.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but that's kind of the
That's Cambridge.
standard. Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, but it's world famous, and I mean, they even did a TV program on it. It's known as a huge birding place too, just because it has such diversity.
Yeah.
There's an cemetery committee, right? Or
There's-
commission or something.
Rick
I don't know
Walker
if they-
and Brian Lindsay on it.
Yeah.
And Jerry Caleb.
It's Jerry Carolyn.
Yeah.
But I did some training and was on
Somebody recall voting for it. Yeah, and I don't think they were invited somehow. Seems like that's an obvious connection.
I'm going to keep pounding that drum. And actually, we had mentioned to town, we got the highway department to go in this week, and they filled in on potholes and lots of stuff. It's pretty big potholes.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. Well, I certainly remember when we had the 300th anniversary, there was a whole cemetery walk that was go on that.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, they had
it's
either
pretty neat.
family members of people or people representing ancestors like the Caliphs, and
Yeah.
they talked up what they did.
Yeah,
Big Mary Caliph there.
Yeah.
It was interesting.
and I'm sure for a lot of folks, that was, first chance to really,
Yeah.
or even realize that there was this
One thing I-
historic cemetery.
One thing I'd love to do there, because I'm looking downstream of my last plan. There are a couple places, like this place over in Hillsborough, where you can get cremated, put in a wool sack, and get buried, and they put a tree on top of you.
Right.
That's your final resting place. I
Yeah.
would love to do that. I don't want to let my moss
Yeah.
and rock on top of me. But
Yeah.
you'd have to change some of our rules on what constitutes a grave. But
Yeah.
that place over in Hillsborough, I toured it. They got hiking trails, and they eventually go down to a river.
Yeah.
You walking through, there are people are buried around there. And next thing you know, it's like walking along the eyes of glass. It's beautiful.
Yeah. We're a little bit off of the connectivity, but time-wise, we all got to end
But
up
if
somewhere.
the cemetery became more visually appealing,
Final.
if the cemetery was more visually appealing, it appeals to the interconnectivity,
Right.
but also would add to people's wishes to be buried there.
Yeah.
Which then you'd have to ask the question, how are we doing for spots?
Yeah, no, and there's some suggestion that you could make a space for what we call natural burials. And
Yeah.
we had a forum at Scoot Pond. I don't know if you've heard about it.
I've heard about
Couldn't make it, but But there is an effort regionally, somebody based, I think, in Newmarket, is going around and, they'd like to find a space.
Yes.
A lot of these are talking. Yes, yeah, our neighbor Sandy setting it up. So anyway, that's being discussed, but, we're getting back to the interconnectivity. And I presume that the cemetery could be connected. I don't know
I
what.
can't remember how far the TIF
Yeah.
goes, but it certainly, I mean,
Close.
start sidewalks and things like
Well,
that.
so, I mean, I've got it up here, so, you can take a look at what it would take to connect it. And this is the town center area, and this is the cemetery. So they're not separated by much, but I think these are all private houses.
Yeah, but it may be possible somebody would be willing to allow for, I mean, who
Yep.
knows? Point is, it's
Yep.
awfully close to downtown. It's certainly within the village district. So, yeah.
Come to Barrington and see dead people.
I wonder what this is. I've never, it says there's no information on this parcel. I don't know what that means.
It'd be behind Big Hit Media. I don't know. I guess I haven't looked hard at that.
Yeah, there may be one or two that aren't on the side.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it could be a sidewalk.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's also besides the crosswalks, there's a plan, at least along Route 9, right, to have half a mile of sidewalks. So,
That'd be nice.
and that, of course, would help with the ADA, right? Right. You don't have to dodge the traffic,
Crossing right.
worry about it.
I would hate to have to get around Barrington.
Yeah, I'm sure people don't, yeah. I guess,
Hey, Paul, I have an app on my phone and it does show a Russell Hayes owns that parcel. So
Oh,
it shows,
okay.
the town doesn't have that.
Yeah, that's weird.
but we don't know if there's a house on it or,
You should know.
Yeah.
I mean,
It shows the driveway going into it.
yeah,
So,
yeah, sure.
So there's somebody's
Yeah.
got
It's
ownership.
the property next to the chiropractor, the old fire station.
Yeah. Well, again, this is probably some of the details that we'll get into next meeting, so
Tyler.
that's helpful.
The Hayes and Betsy, who still live there, are very connected to the historical society. And so if you were to pitch the interconnectivity of the town center to the historical society cemetery, I bet you that the back part of her lot would be a very.
Perfect.
Yeah, and if you look at this lot, the buildings and the driveway are up here, and it looks like the whole lower part, so that's a prospect. I don't know what this pond is like, or where a trail could go south or north.
It's like a pretty big wetland on the other side.
Yes.
Yeah.
The only thing we can bury out there is ducks.
Any other ideas on the cemetery beyond the grave? Okay, well, I'll keep at it. I'll let you know what else comes up. So we'll move on. There was a planning board meeting last week. Paul, did you by any chance get to it? About Young Road?
I thought I had gone to everything on Young Road, but I maybe I missed one.
Yeah, I realized, well, it came up kind of quick at the beginning of the month, but I know it was on the agenda. I don't know what was, and I was talking to Vanessa just last night. For some reason, I didn't think to ask her what came down, but anyway.
Well, we would have been notified if any new documents had been submitted, right?
Not necessarily. I mean, that's again one of the problems we've had. If it's not a new site plan, I mean, you'd hope if it was a significant item. It was funny because Ann was there too at this other meeting, the meeting of the boards. We didn't get into it. It was interesting because Mr. Thibodeau was there. He's on is the developer for that site, Young Road. He's on the ZBA, so that's who they had there. Not everybody from each board, but he was there, and he actually came up to me to ask about solar installations, but I didn't think to ask him, hey, what's up with Young Road? But Anyway.
Okay, there are no new documents that have been submitted and put on the site. So, the next step was that they were going to work on developing that new plan that that they had discussed. With the new proposal. There's nothing there.
Yeah.
528, I mean, these are since our last meeting, right? The last two docs.
I don't know.
It's it's just a letter.
Yeah, but that's a continuance. That would mean they may not have discussed it,
Yeah.
right?
It says July 16th, so apparently.
Okay, so maybe nothing did happen. Isn't that what it
That
says?
explains the lack of new documents.
Right, and that nothing happened at the meeting, presumably. Yeah,
Right.
well, it's good to know. Yeah, okay. Yeah, I didn't get to that point of looking up the documents, but so that's the story, I guess. It's to be continued.
Right.
Moving on. Monitoring, of course, Gary isn't here, but he did send me a few items. He said that he did complete the Booty Farm monitoring on the 25th, and upcoming is the Newhall monitoring, and that's on also on Tuesday, the 18th at 9 a.m. So if anybody's interested in getting in on that, it's a neat place if you haven't been to the Newhall property.
Yeah, we've been out clearing trails recently, so it should be easy on the trails.
Yeah.
I can't do that one.
And-
I've got to come in already.
They done, Jack? The logging is officially,
I think they're done. Yeah, we got to maybe take some time to go in and re-clarify because some places where we have blazes on trees, the trees are gone.
right?
We got to put some new blazes.
Yeah, yeah. And I believe Charlie Tatum's going to join Gary on that.
He
so-
knows that one. He walks to it. He's so
Yeah,
close.
yeah, for sure. So anyway, if anybody is interested, get a hold of Gary. And then that's the last monitoring hike until September 21st. So we're off the hook for the summer. The other item that came up kind of related to monitoring, there was an inquiry about the Barrington Trail as it goes through called the Bar property. It's now the name Gallagher.
Wait a minute, is this Schultz End or the other?
No, it's the other end. I mean, it's beyond Schultz, but the deal was that there was some new stone had been laid down basically on the trail in the wet areas,
Oh, Crush.
and everybody was wondering who
Yeah,
done
I
it.
think it's somebody that's new itself that was asking,
Right,
did you guys do this?
right.
And I think we found out that the landowner on CD
Right,
Ridge Road
yeah.
did it, some of it, and it was for the right reasons.
I guess. I mean, the question was, and this is what Charlie Tatum was inquiring about, is does it meet the easement requirements? I guess it's their land, but obviously you want to make sure it's not outside of the easement rules. Because it was pretty significant. I mean, I walked down there myself,
Yeah,
and it was like, truckload of
yeah.
heavy stone.
Lots of
Uh,
it.
Oh, it was tough. I was really.
It's a very wet area, so it made things so much better.
Yeah, I mean, it does make it easier to get through there. Obviously,
Yeah.
there were some pretty wet areas, but it's also kind of, unsightly. It's a gravel path. But, I'm sure overall it's probably a benefit. But anyway, that's still to be determined whether there's any issue there. Because I probably reported previously that Seld had done some road trail work there.
Well, Sel put down a lot of rock,
Yeah, Yeah.
off of
so they may have thought it was just
on their
fine.
trail on Stonehouse Forest.
Yeah, they've
A
done,
lot.
yeah, I think they have somebody that's his whole job is
Yeah.
pulling
Oh,
rock
okay.
around,
Yeah, yeah.
dumping, whatever,
So it's-
laying it down. But anyway, we determined that it was the landowner, so, it's certainly likely to be a reasonable approach. So I think that was it for monitoring. And I haven't heard back from Mark West about the eco study, but we ought to get an update on what's going on there.
Yeah, Doug,
Yeah.
Rob, you may want to talk about this too, but at the planning board meeting on Monday, there is a lot of interest on what's going on with Richardson Pond and what the status of that study is. So
Really?
Rob, what was that in the context of?
It was just more like what the update was, but it wasn't. The state doesn't seem to be too worried about it as long as we continue to try to just make progress on that. But it doesn't seem like it's immediate. There's no immediate danger. It's not like pressing. And so as long as we kind of keep exploring what's going to be the right thing to do, and we're doing eco studies, it was more just looking for an update, Paul. It wasn't. I don't think there's anyone.
Yeah,
jumping
I
into
think Connor wanted to be able to just send them, some information about where that was.
All right, well, I'll see what I can find out and pass it along to.
Ask him to send a few sentences to us so we can take the heat off.
Yeah, and since we're paying for it, we ought to get our money's worth or whatever. Be up on what's going on. Okay. So I think that's about it for old business, right? The lands committee hasn't met, right? So.
No, there's nothing new there.
The chair of the lands committee was also on this interconnectivity. He's also the snowmobile trail master, evidently.
Oh,
So
my goodness.
he wears several hats. And he's a forestry guy, right? Isn't that his?
Yeah, he's with the university urban forestry program or something.
Okay, so he knows his stuff. Yeah, knows his trees. Yeah. Okay. Anything else anybody wants to bring up? Yes.
We got our email summarizing some of the legislative activities from the New Hampshire Association of Conservation Commissions.
Right.
With that group, we pay like $25 a year.
Yes.
But this could affect us. HB 1302 was passed by the House and Senate and signed by the governor. Your towns can decide through a warrant, I think, to make the Conservation Commission elected positions rather than appointed. I don't know how much of this might be coming out of what happened up for Casella and Dalton.
I think it
might have come from that. It goes into effect on July 19th unless somebody, I don't know, files a suit or
Was
something.
it an option or it's required?
No,
It's an option.
It's an option. Yeah.
The local legislative body must decide by majority vote in town meeting. So someone would have to be, someone would have to be concerned enough about us to put the change through. I don't think we've had anything that came up where we were the roadblock to anything specific.
What happened in North?
What?
What happened in North?
Casella, the company, similar to any, but they're a major trash hauler. They wanted to put in a landfill. And there was talk of, people getting steamrolled and they didn't like the Conservation Commission saying no. But I'm guessing, a lot of conservation commissions would probably not say yes to a landfill. I don't know the full story because it's way out there, but it is.
But there were people basically calling for the heads of the conservation. Yeah, I mean, people just get riled up.
I'm assuming they have the same powers under 36A that we do, which is we just make recommendations. We don't vote.
It's not like it's
So I don't know exactly the whole story there, but it's probably an offshoot of that. If you didn't get the email, I can send it to anybody. And there is a link if you want to see the final version of the whole bill that went through. But it looks like, we would probably get a heads up that it's happening. The only issue would be would it be somebody coming after us with some sort of retribution or something? I don't know. Because I don't know what anyone would. It's probably
If Jack, if someone wanted to push this issue of making these elected positions, what would they have to do? Do you know?
They'd have to do whatever necessary to get on the warrant.
25 names.
25 signature, verified signatures.
It's a petition.
That's it.
A nice paragraph for a warrant.
Yeah.
And it would go to the deliberative in February and the voting in March.
Yeah.
Unless there's a lawsuit that somehow suspends this, but I don't know how many conservation committees or commissions have the ability to fund a lawsuit or would be doing it.
Well, it's not until it happens. It's not an issue.
Yeah.
Right? So
I don't know if this is a case of, I didn't do anything until they came for me thing, but it's out there now.
Yeah.
You should just keep an eye out.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, most people have no clue what goes on in Concord, right? So unless they're really following the legislative, of the hundreds of bills that come through every year. But, probably somebody is.
It's not like there's many people vying to volunteer
No.
for conservation.
Yeah, that's the
They're,
thing.
they're gonna volunteer to run and get elected. I mean, it's
I
not
think
like-
that was the main argument against it, was that
Yeah.
it would really discourage a lot of people from even
Yeah.
showing up.
I met a guy from Northwood today. I was at some trustee of the trust fund training. Yeah, this guy, apparently whoever was running for their slot on the trust fund decided to pull out, didn't want it. So it became a writing campaign when they had their elections. This guy got the position with 10 votes. He talked to a few friends and he beat out Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse, so he's in. The two people on the board got so pissed because he's an out-of-stater from North Carolina. They called quit. So for a moment there, he had to call the Attorney General's office and say, "What do I do? I can't get a quorum. I'm the only one left, and I'm new." So
Which town was
this is Northwood, just down the road.
Oh, for him.
And so, there are things that can happen that can really shake things up. I don't think it's gonna happen to us, but I thought I'd bring it up because it
Yeah.
potentially could affect our.
Well, we do know there are, should we say, agitators of Barrington. I mean, people that
Yeah, it's not
I can imagine doing this sort of thing.
just set the apple cart, yeah.
Yeah, just don't pass it around.
No,
People-
that's
Don't
what
give them any ideas.
No one reads our minutes. We don't read our minutes. You didn't read our minutes.
Yeah, but we are being recorded, so let's not.
Yeah, oh, yes.
We don't make too big a deal of it. Yeah. Anything else on that list? I read that too. That was the one that seemed most relevant, but there were some others regarding wetlands or something. but-
Yeah, exempt certain landowners from requiring wetlands permits after a natural disaster or flooding event.
Yeah, that's.
I don't know if we're gonna do this.
Well, it could affect, I was thinking the Isinglass River or something. The deal is you need a permit to go in and mess around with, logs in the
Yeah.
river or something.
The NHAC was silent on the amendment. While the language is not necessary, you did provide clarifications for what the landowners were allowed to do with woody material from streams. So this maybe gives us a little guidance, because didn't we have someone come in and tell us that he had some, what should I do about
Well, it was
logs
inquiring
floating
about it.
out?
Yeah.
So I guess it could have affected that.
Yeah.
The other thing, we don't do ourselves records for timber harvest in the wetlands. Probably, that was laid on the table. Postponed.
Well, we should, if folks are interested, we can pass it around. You did.
Yeah.
I don't know, are you all getting stuff from the NHCC? I don't know. I'm not sure how they got.
I don't.
It said you're on this because you're associated with us, maybe because they paid the bill.
Yeah, maybe. Share.
And I'm looking, trying to find is there one of those, here, this was shared by a friend, sign up yourself.
Do you want to just forward?
Yeah, we're forward
meetings whenever they come out.
Yeah, why not? It's, end of legislative season kind of summary, so it's kind of.
If they do newsletters and.
Yeah, they do a regular newsletter, for sure. We ought to, get our money's worth for members. Anything else from the Trails Committee?
Like I said, cleaning up trails, knocking them off one at a time, now looking at some construction things, kiosks we need for certain areas.
I happened to look at the agenda and I noticed the town hall land, or whatever.
We keep talking about it, the issue is Connor's vision was that would park here on weekends and go out here and go around.
Right.
Very hard land, very wet land. It's not much. And then we got to deal with Old Green Hill Road over here, which is sort of a canal most of the season.
I actually went in there the other day, actually with Joyce Capiello, happens to be a neighbor of mine, but she was curious about it, and I kind of thought I knew the lay of the land or the lay of the water. You may know there's this big pool of water that the off-road folks.
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason it's not drying up now, because normally you can, when it's not particularly wet, you can walk around the edge of it. There's kind of an area that's not so deep, that it's maybe only a foot or two deep as opposed to 4 feet deep. Well, it's all water now from one end to the other. And the reason we found out when we skirted around and bushwhacked through the swamp, got onto the other end, the beavers built a dam about 2 or 3 feet high, right over the outlet. So it's a mess, and I'm sure the beavers love it.
The trucks still go through? The mud-
Well,
mud
they'd have a tough
breaks?
time. I mean, if you have a 8 foot, one of those
Right.
mega,
With a snorkel.
yeah,
thing
all
on it.
that, maybe you could do it, but we say, no, they get stuck as it is.
I heard there was an old homestead, like an apple orchard and
Yeah.
an old walnut grove.
But it's probably house lots now. I mean,
Right.
so much of that was, taken up. I'm somewhat familiar with that. And some of my neighbors have been around for 40, 50 years. They said, yeah, we used to go up to that orchard and take apples and peaches.
Yeah.
I went up there a few years ago and there were still, 1 or 2 apple trees that were flowering and all. But like I said, if you look, the house lots are so close now to, Old Green Hill Road is the road that goes straight up the hill, that there's very little, there might be 1 or 2 trees left, but it's certainly not an orchard. There's an old cemetery in there too, that I don't know where the house was, but the cemetery is kind of up on the hill over here. And the other thing is, somebody, I guess the adjoining property, they actually put in a barrier there. There's a road of sorts, an off-road road that goes off of Old Green Hill Road at the top of the hill and goes around the piece of land that is part of this land that's, in conservation. And then it connects back to Substitute Road down a very steep slope through basically a ravine that the trucks created. But anyway, the landowner evidently went in there just in probably the last week or two because the tracks were still muddy. The rocks are still muddy. They put some big boulders the size of this table right in the pathway of where trucks used to go
Probably
through there.
some ATV activity, maybe.
Yeah, I'm sure they're just trying to limit the, but at the same time, they're putting in additional trails on their land, but obviously they just don't want everybody through there. And Connor told me that they're also, the people living in the new neighborhood up here are concerned about all the trucks going by their backyards. So, there's already issues.
Yeah, well, we see we're not content with that. Like I said, the challenge of working
Right.
this land, the fact that there's so many areas where we're gonna have to go like right up to the house lots,
Right.
which most land owners would probably like to have a tree buffer between a trail
Yeah.
and just so you don't see people.
Yeah.
And yet some places there's not enough room because there's either it drops off or it's wet.
Yeah.
And so this is, I'm not hearing a lot of enthusiasm as far as the Trails Committee. Now, maybe over that direction,
Yeah.
there's some trails, but the project then there is a problem with, well, if we're gonna make it for public access, do the people with the $800,000 and $900,000 homes, are they gonna provide an area for, they'll give people parking? Because like even in Village Place, they really don't like us parking on Breezy Way.
Yeah.
You can come out there, but I know we went there once to do some trail work and they came out like, what are you doing here? We're the Trails Committee and we need to work this end of the trail, but they really didn't want to see a whole bunch of hikers starting from there.
Yeah.
And we might get the same here because, it's in.
Well, there's a road that I think was kind of built with this purpose that comes off of the
Yeah.
figure 8, the basic layout, that goes basically out to Old Green Hill Road. And then again, there's a big boulder there to make sure trucks don't go through. But that was, at one point was discussed as kind of emergency access, again, not very helpful if you're,
Not with a car.
not with a car or even a truck, get stuck probably.
Yeah.
But it is an access to the conservation area. And they even have a sign saying public access or, walkway to the
Yeah.
woods.
So would they
the
be
open space.
amenable to,
Yeah, I don't
parking
know,
spots?
but I'm just saying it's possible, or it seemed to be that was perhaps done with that in mind. I still think there's a possibility of a trail over here. Might need to build a bridge or two or a little bit of it. But I know we don't want to get too into the wetlands. There's also vernal pools back there too. Certainly more.
Where's the sign you mentioned that says public access?
It's, if you go up there, it's September Way is the kind of crossroad.
Yeah,
And you come to a 4-way, you just continue up. I think it's just called September Way. You go to the end of it and you're within like 50 yards of Old Green Hill Road. And then, the pavement just stops. And
yeah.
just a gravel
Oh,
path,
okay.
so you can walk up through there, And I believe it's probably a public right of way anyway, just the way the roads are laid out. Pretty sure the planning board designated it as such, so it's not like you're, trespassing somebody's
No,
property.
but I mean,
Yeah,
we always look at when we put trails in that we're not gonna be pissing off neighbors.
yeah,
We don't wanna become the
Sure.
pickleball courts of our.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's certainly not an ideal piece of land to try to make access work. But there's a pretty little stream back there. I mean, few of us, you were with us, we walked back there years ago.
Years ago, you're talking
Yeah.
about years ago.
Yeah, but I'm saying the stream's still there, and it's a nice little brook,
Yeah.
and I think it probably runs year round. But it may not be.
Yeah.
But anyway, the other issue there, and again, part of the interconnectivity, and the reason I made a fuss about it with Connor is that the Chestnut Woods, I don't know why they called it that. I don't think there's any chestnuts out there, but that piece of land, which is like 64 acres, I believe, is also public access, but you can't access it unless you want to put on your waders through the pond. There's supposed to be an access off of Poland Road, but that's never been developed either. And it's the Green Hill Brook. It's a pretty little valley area, wetland area through there. But anyway, the idea is that you'd have multiple connections. And of course, it's not very far from the railroad right of way. So in theory, if you can get across 125, you could walk there from downtown.
Yeah. I know one thing that's a little scary though, this road right out here, it's probably the scariest section if you wanted to put a crosswalk in. Because you have people coming around a turn,
Yeah.
both coming up slope and like,
Yeah.
we're gonna kill somebody eventually.
Yeah, no, I don't think there'll be a sidewalk to the
No.
town hall.
Yeah,
What I'm
you
saying
gotta
is there could be a way to walk here without going
have
to
to be
125.
Careful because it's not that easy to see what's coming.
Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm sure the state DOT would be thrilled with that idea.
Yeah, and I don't think we're gonna get a whole
Yeah,
problem, either bridges or cow tunnels.
yeah. But it's a little easier down at Scruton Pond Road. You know,
Yeah.
It's a straightaway, you're at the bottom. They do drive really fast because it's at the bottom of the hill, but at least they can see you coming. So anyway, we're running out of time here. Is anything else? I
Yeah,
guess-
is the coop farm dead in the water now?
Well, that was brought up also the other night. John Driscoll.
Yeah, John Driscoll has kind of indicated.
My understanding is that Sal, and I guess he suggested, he heard a rumor that Sal was talking with the landowner or something. But it's not clear, and they're probably not gonna let us know until there's some deal.
Okay.
But they're certainly very interested. I can imagine it's one of their top priorities, because, we're talking hundreds of acres.
Yeah,
Some of the most, several prime wetlands,
yeah.
and it's a major wildlife corridor over there. So,
And the poor woman in Quebec,
yeah. So,
and,
yeah, but my understanding is the developer who had come up with the plan, 175 houses, that's probably not going anywhere.
Yeah.
He probably just bailed out of it. So again, I'm sure something will happen there, but we don't know what yet. But it's certainly in our interest to see it, get conserved. So,
right.
again, it's one of these examples where they evidently the family wanted to do it, but the guy died, and
Oh, yeah.
and then long story, but something that could have, should have, whatever. So another object lesson to not leave things to the last minute. All right, are we at sightings? Folks seeing
I
out
have
there.
red belly woodpeckers now that I have a lot of suet. I
Uh-huh.
buy 3 different flavors.
Yeah, they do love that stupid. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We're up to 10 painted turtles laying eggs in the yard,
Really?
which I think that's a new record. I don't think and that's the ones that we've seen. God knows how many there are that we haven't. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have like a nursery area marked out or some kind of? I mean,
It's just, it's actually the area in front of the solar array. We have some raised beds, but it's sandy soil. They just seem to love it. And, the wetlands is not far away. So,
yeah. We had one right in front of our garage. And it's probably not a great place to lay eggs, because, I mean, it isn't right in the drive. Pretty darn close. I'm sure the snowplow ran over it. Other things?
Rose-breasted grosbeaks. I know other people have seen them, but on our property, we don't see them a lot. So
Yeah.
See what?
Coming around.
Rose-breasted grosbeaks
Uh-huh. Yeah.
or cardinals is a different genus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Two birds of that.
good singers, so, yeah.
They're the same.
I actually saw a turtle crossing at our turtle crossing section. So I put the sign up.
Oh, my goodness.
And I wasn't the only one who saw it. It was funny because I'm kind of, this on Screw Pond Road, you know, near, not right at the big wetland, the big marsh, but just down the road from there, it was a smaller little marshy, boggy area. And I saw this thing out in the road, and I figured, I bet that's a turtle. And I was not necessarily in a hurry, but I just kind of continued moving along or saw it. And I made sure to make sure I didn't drive, you know, run over it, but I actually, you know, it was under my car essentially. And I could tell it had just tucked itself down in its shell. And then I said, oh, I should go rescue it, right? Because it's in the middle of the road. So I turned around and came back. And then as I was doing that, someone else pulled over, and she had already got out and was carrying it across the road. And said, so I stopped and rolled down the window and said, thank you very much for doing that. You know, it's this important thing. And I said, is it still there? You know, did it swim away? Or she says, no, it's still sitting there on the side of the road. And so we checked it out, and it appears to be a Blanding's turtle. So it was
Well,
definitely not
great.
a turtle. You know, they have that humpy shape to it.
Well, he probably has to go and clean out the back end because when you drove over him,
Yeah, probably. Yeah, you could tell it was just like huddled. In fact, when we checked it out, it was still in the shell. I mean, it didn't put, because I guess it's some marking along its neck that's supposed to be the way to tell whether it's a Blandings or not. Couldn't see its neck because it was.
Yeah, if they're still inside, it's also a little easier to pick them up and move them.
Yeah.
If they get all their, you know, all their extremities out and they start.
Oh, yeah. But anyway, it did make it across the road, so it's a good thing. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
Second, no.
All right. Okay.
Bye, Paul.
See you.
Okay. See ya. Good night.